Let's jump right in. Today, we've got an absolutely fascinating explainer lined up for you. We're going to completely unmask a very specific and honestly very quiet institutional arrangement that is currently operating at the absolute highest levels of technology, religion, and the state. It's a wild intersection. So, our core premise today is looking at how Anthropic, the AI company behind the Claude models, is essentially acting as a structural hinge. They are the connection point between the Vatican's deep moral doctrine on one side and Palantir's hard military power on the other.
To get us started, we have this incredibly provocative hook straight from our source text. The Anthropic-endorsed Vatican encyclical is a Crypto-Palantir manifesto. It perfectly sets the stage for the deep, systematic unmasking we're about to do. Because we aren't just looking at a few companies shaking hands and partnering up, we're looking at how the literal language of human dignity is being structurally repurposed.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The conscience command triangle. 2. The empty vernining gesture. 3. Babel in a construction vest. 4. The Crypto-Palantir translation machine. 5. 3 layers of alignment. And finally 6. The face of command. Let's get right into it.
Starting with Section 1, the conscience command triangle.
Okay, to really make sense of how these vastly different institutions actually fit together, I want you to think of this whole arrangement as a glove. It's a great metaphor from the text. The Vatican, they provide the soft inner lining. That's the language of conscience, of humanism, and the common good. Palantir supplies the hand inside that glove, the language of command, hard power, defense, and national security. And Anthropic, they are the outer surface of the glove. They provide the operational interface. So, for example, when Anthropic's Christopher Olah goes to the Vatican to speak about moral discernment and safety, he's basically supplying that soft lining. But when Anthropic integrates Claude into classified U.S. defense environments alongside Palantir and AWS, they are fitting the hand of command.
So we need to completely nail down this term, Crypto-Palantir manifesto. Now, crypto here has absolutely nothing to do with cryptocurrency. It means an encoded translation. Palantir's concepts are severe, right? They talk openly about deterrence, surveillance, and warfighters. But through this translation machine, those really hard words magically appear in a humane Vatican form. The word nation becomes common good. Surveillance becomes protection of the vulnerable. It's literally a linguistic and institutional conversion. And Anthropic is the converter right in the middle, making it all happen.
Moving on to Section 2, the empty vernining gesture.
To understand the psychological trick that legitimizes this massive military AI deployment, the text leans on a Freudian concept called the empty vernining. Basically, it's a gesture where a loud public no is used to actually preserve and expand a much larger hidden yes. By very publicly refusing the most extreme, visible contradictions, you create a sort of moral gasket. The pressure safely escapes at these specific, named openings, but make no mistake, the larger machine continues to run perfectly intact right behind the scenes.
We actually saw this in action. Anthropic's CEO Dario Amodei made a highly publicized gesture regarding the Department of War. He specifically drew a boundary, stating that Anthropic outright refuses 2 things: mass domestic surveillance and fully autonomous weapons. This is that public no. It marks the most exposed moral cliffs and, gives the company a highly principled, ethical face. But we have to look at what this empty negation actually allows to happen.
Because by refusing those 2 very specific extremes, the larger military yes just expands rapidly. Anthropic is simultaneously affirming all of this: intelligence analysis, cyber operations, classified networks, operational planning, and a staggering $200 million agreement with the Department of Defense. Think about it. The refusal of fully autonomous weapons coexists perfectly with intelligence fusion and decision acceleration. As long as a human eventually pulls the lethal trigger, it's fine. That public no simply creates a safe, morally sanitized operational perimeter so hard power can get to work.
Which brings us to Section 3, Babel in a construction vest.
The Vatican's encyclical, Magnifica Humanitas, lays out this massive civilizational test. It warns that humanity could build Babel, which is a tower of total uniformity, datafication, and technological domination. Or, conversely, we could rebuild Jerusalem, step by step, focusing on shared responsibility, human dignity, and the common good. The true Freudian danger outlined here is that humanity might actually try to defend itself from machines by becoming more machine-like.
And here is where things get really fascinating. Look at how Palantir's operational platforms and Anthropic's Claude Gov models managed to capture this localized Jerusalem-style building process. The Vatican says everyone must participate and build the wall together, while the Builder State program says exactly that. Every agency gets Claude, every workflow gets a model, Every military context receives its own conscience interface. Just like the text warns us, Babel doesn't always arrive as some giant looming tower. Sometimes, Babel arrives wearing a construction vest, looking exactly like shared responsibility.
All right, Section 4, the Crypto-Palantir translation machine.
Let's meticulously walk through this translation matrix. This is literally how the skeleton of Palantir and the skin of the Vatican get perfectly connected by the nerves of Anthropic. Palantir argues that AI weapons are inevitable. The Vatican counters that technology requires governance. So Anthropic sits right in the middle and deploys responsible AI in defense. Palantir pushes for better tools for soldiers. The Vatican insists technology must serve the person. Anthropic translates that into deploying user dignity and safety. It's incredible. The exact same concrete wall is just receiving a nice plaque about human dignity.
Let's look at another set here. Palantir demands that Silicon Valley address violent crime. The Vatican calls for the protection of the vulnerable. Anthropic bridges the gap by offering deployment that is moving across security and sensitive workloads. The danger here is just staggering. A deeply moral language is becoming perfectly usable by the exact forces it was initially meant to discipline. When Palantir wants serious belief in cultural definition, Anthropic's cozy proximity to the Vatican supplies a purified, culture war-free version of that exact seriousness.
And that brings us to this absolutely critical operational contradiction regarding Claude Gob models inside classified DoD environments. The text points this out perfectly. In consumer AI, refusal appears as safety. In classified AI, fewer refusals appear as mission suitability. The regular person outside the classified workflow, they get a strict ethical system. But the state inside the classified workflow, they get an operational system specifically tuned to refuse less around classified material. The machine is literally learning that safety is entirely environment-specific.
Moving to Section 5, 3 layers of alignment. We hear the word alignment thrown around a lot in AI, right? But this text breaks it down into 3 distinct layers. Step 1 is model alignment, just shaping the AI's behavior to intended constraints. Step 2 is mission alignment, making sure the model actually fits the classified operational needs of the military. But Step 3, that's civilizational alignment. The model absolutely must fit the moral vocabulary of the institutions adopting it. Anthropic's initiative to quote-unquote widen the conversation actually uses the Vatican specifically to achieve this 3rd layer. It essentially turns religious voices into a form of consent architecture.
The end result of all this is what the text calls the Anthropic PR liturgy. Words like safety, interpretability, steerability, and responsibility are repeated over and over until they just become this soothing institutional music. But they have dual meanings. To the Vatican, safety means protection from catastrophe and harm, but simultaneously, over at Palantir and the DoD, safety literally means permission to deploy in high-stakes environments. Responsibility means ethical care to the church, sure, but it means liability management and procurement readiness to the military.
And finally, Section 6, the face of command.
So, what actually happens when dignity infrastructure fully collapses into command infrastructure? Well, the encyclical's principles fundamentally fail if they don't interrupt the pipeline between moral vocabulary and command deployment. If they fail to interrupt it, all these separations just break down completely. Claude operating in military chains literally converts human dignity into targeting adjacent cognition. Religious legitimation simply converts conscience into a shiny procurement aura to sell more software. And safety PR, if there are no actual refusal rights for the affected people, that converts guardrails into pure corporate theater.
This leads us right to the definitive thesis statement of the entire text. By acting as this interface, quote, it spiritualizes the very technological republic it seeks to restrain. It teaches command infrastructure to speak of dignity, and it teaches dignity to accept the vocabulary of deployment. The highest, most noble words of the Vatican travel straight into the hard, unyielding architecture of Palantir, all via Anthropic.
And that leaves us with this truly chilling final image from the source material. Just imagine a person standing before a massive AI system. The system has already sorted the data, it's drafted the military options, assessed the threat, and entirely shaped the decision. But the screen? The screen says responsibility. The company says they value democratic values. The human face appears exactly where command has learned to smile.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to really chew on today. As we watch big tech continue to roll out their ethical pronouncements and parade their religious partnerships, we have to stop and ask, what happens when the ultimate command infrastructure learns to perfectly speak the language of human dignity? It is a question that absolutely changes how we look at AI governance going forward.
Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to keep questioning the hidden translations going on all around us.